Yo, what's up? It's your boy Currency 365. Hope you guys are doing well. Legends never die, they stay in our hearts. If you want to support us, click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and also you can come down here and hit the join button under the video or in our channel section. And you can also join our Patreon, patreon.com/currency365. And we also have Cash App and also PayPal for support if you want to sow some seeds. Peace out. God bless. Enjoy the video and keep the movement going. Legends. Bye.
Okay, so what I'm about to share, this is not financial or investment advice of any kind whatsoever. I'm sharing my opinion, and that's what this is. Years ago, if you would have asked me when the wealth transfer was going to happen, I would have said for a climate much like we're in, right? Markets going down, things declining, people think, you hear it in the media. Stuff is really bad, massive recession, could it be a depression? All these things just about how bad it's going to get, right? And so I'm sitting here aware of the climate that we're sitting in, where I'm like, it makes a whole lot of sense to me somewhere in this season for God to pour out the wealth transfer. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. My concern is that lots of people are going into the wealth transfer. They're going in on the decline. They're going in where they're just barely hanging on, and they're going in survival mode. What's the problem with that? The problem is that our bodies were not designed to be in survival mode for 10, 20, 30, 50 years, right? And so many people have been in this constant stressed, anxious, worried state for decades or a decade or 5 years or whatever. And you lose your ability to create because all of your energy that you have for the day is going into imagining worst case scenarios, trying to survive, and just basically surviving the mental hell that you've put yourself in because you're in survival mode. So as I'm sitting here learning from Joe Dispenza, and he's going to be for some people and not for others, but there's people that can make us understand the changes that we need to make. And so if somebody like Joe Dispenza doesn't resonate, you can easily just ask God, who do I listen to? Where do I go? Who has the keys that I need right now to help me make changes in my life along these lines? Joe Dispenza just resonates for me on a high level. And I sat down today with the intention of reading like 20 pages in the book that I have. And I got through half a page, and that's what inspired me to make this video, because it's like, this is so true. You cannot be in survival mode and on the decline going into the wealth transfer and expect to do really well. Again, it's the whole being faithful with little and being faithful with much. So it's like, okay, if people can't believe to be doing well in the economic climate that we're in, why do you just believe that everything's going to be better? You've been broke 5, 10, 15, 20 years, but suddenly more money is going to fix it. It's like, well, no. Look at the lottery winners. The lottery winners, they win money, and they're broke 2 to 3 years later. Why? Because they're in survival mode. So they're trying to spend money so they can get hits of dopamine, buying all the stuff and doing all the things for the people so that they're massive people pleasers. The people that are in the wealth transfer are no different than this. So if you're in survival mode and you're on the decline, mostly monetarily is what I'm getting at, but being in decline monetarily is a sign of what's going on inside. So going into this on the decline with the expectation that money alone is going to turn it around, or you can fix it after. But let me tell you, having lots of money is going to make it far more stressful if you're in survival mode to try and make that change. Why? Let's imagine you have millions of dollars that are now in your bank account, right? And you've potentially invested it, or you're just holding it in your account waiting for something, whatever the case is. But you're watching these account balances go down because you're spending money or because the investments haven't gone up yet, or whatever the case is. Can you imagine the panic state that people are going to be in because they're panicked because, they're not making as much money, or they've quit their job because the wealth transfer happened, but they weren't ready emotionally inside to deal with this because they've been stuck in survival mode. And yet we sit here and we're like, why hasn't God poured this out yet? It's really freaking obvious to me why. Because if God had poured this out 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it would have been a giant waste because we have not prepared or been made ready. We haven't made ourselves ready. Right? We have a part to play in this. We have free will. God has given us free will, and it's like, what are you choosing to do with that? I'll post the video that Ed Milet did with Joe Dispenza again here for people that haven't seen that. But like, recognize the atmosphere that we're in right now and think to yourself logically how much sense it would make for the wealth transfer to come in this season. Think about the turnaround that I believe is coming, which ties to my Super Bowl 51 video that you can go watch on my channel, talking about why there was no red wave. Like there's action that can be taken. My group, which meets on Thursday nights, most Thursdays, we won't this week because it's going to be American Thanksgiving. We're having incredible conversations, just mentally preparing and getting ready for what we believe is coming. Other people are reading books or have followed other people who have great resources, right? But most people are just desperate to know the date and the time. It doesn't matter if you're not ready to steward it properly. If you were an airline pilot, or you wanted to go be a welder, or a dentist, or any sorts of these things, there would actually be schooling that you would need to go do. Why? Well, you need to be taught the skills, but you also need to build the pathways in your brain so that they're actually there so that you can actually do the job, right? You wouldn't ask somebody to come be a welder who's never been a welder before. You would never ask somebody to fly a plane who's never flown a plane before. So why do we think it's any different preparing to be wealthy? Especially for people who have never been wealthy in their life before and then just think, well, whatever. Money is not the problem. And I still maintain that God has not poured this out because we, as a collective, are not at the threshold that God is needing yet in order to pour this out where he knows there's a good level of stewardship. What's that level got to be? I don't know, 10% competent? Like 10% of the people in the wealth transfer being competent to be able to make and increase what God gives them? If you look at the parable of the talents, the threshold was 66%. And I'm like, I don't even know if there's like 5% that could take and double what God gives them right now. As a good steward, if you really cared about the stewardship of what you were about to be given, let's say you knew you were going to be given like 1 million sheep, right? You would either need to learn a lot about sheep or find somebody that knew a lot about sheep so that they could care for the flock that you were given. If God's going to give you a whole bunch of money, do you not think that there's a level of stewardship that's going to be required in preparation in order to steward that well? Hence, he who is faithful with little will be faithful with much. Something for people to think about, because this stuff is really important. Something that's been stirring in my spirit is the parable of the talents, and there's 2 parts to this. One is the guy who got 1. He took his talent, he buried it under a tree, and when the master came back, he took it, gave it back to him, and he got chastised for it. The master asked, why didn't you put it in a bank? Because at least could have made interest. He wasn't pleased with what the guy did. And he took it from him and he gave it to the guy that had most. And I'm sitting here thinking about a lot of wealth transfer people that I talk to. They're talking about being in survival mode. Now, that means different things to different people. But essentially what that means is they're taking what they're given and they're basically just going to deplete it. They're not going to increase it at all. They're not going to create something that increases in value. They're talking about just hanging on and surviving. Now, if the master took from the guy that had preserved his talent and given it to the guy that had most, what is God going to do with the people that he pours out to that do nothing but deplete? The other side of that is being the person that gets the most talents. And I believe that would be tied to stewardship, the ability to steward. And I think we wrongly associate that with, you just don't spend much. No, it doesn't say that the guy took the 5 talents and he just didn't spend much. He actually took it and increased it. He doubled it. And I question if a lot of people are really in a position to take what they're given and at least double it. And I think doubling is really, really low bar with what we're being given. And I'm sitting here like, okay, what are people listening to? What are their mindsets? What are their thoughts? Like, what are you thinking about? I don't believe this is the end of time. I don't believe I don't think this is it. I really believe that there's going to be reprieve, that God is going to step in here, and that we are going to get opportunities galore that come, and the wealth transfer and all that. Like, God is not pouring out a wealth transfer for this to just be the end. And there's enough escapism mentality already in Christian circles where I think we missed the part where God said, occupy till I come. Because I don't know about you, but I don't see a lot of occupying. There's barely existing and hanging in survival mode. And when you're in survival mode, you're essentially in fear, and don't even get me started on what fear does. So for people who need a community, because they know they need to think differently, I have one. You can join through Patreon. It's $25 a month at this point. The price might be going up, and I might be going to a different platform at some point. But at this moment I'm recording this video, you can get in for $25. It's important what people are doing to prepare mentally. The steps people are going through in their minds and the money habits that they have, so when this happens, are you ready to be effective or not? And you don't have to join my group to be effective. That's not what I'm saying. But most people are thinking, well, this is just going to help me survive. That is the wrong thought pattern, and it's not good stewardship.